The evening light spilled across the kitchen tiles in soft, amber ribbons, the kind that made everything look calmer than it truly was. Alex stood at the counter, stirring a pot of simmering marinara with the slow, absent-minded rhythm of someone whose hands moved on instinct while his mind drifted elsewhere. He'd always liked cooking. It grounded him. But tonight every sound felt too sharp, every scent too strong, as though the world around him had subtly shifted a few degrees off-center. He noticed the first inconsistency 2 weeks prior. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic, no lipstick on collars, no late-night texts blinking on her screen in suspicious neon. It was smaller, quieter, the kind of thing most people would brush off. But Alex wasn't most people. His mind worked like a tapestry loom, catching loose threads, weaving them into patterns until they revealed what was hidden beneath. The detail had been a perfume, light floral, not one Sarah owned. He smelled it on her hair when she kissed him goodnight, her lips pressing lightly against his cheek as she whispered, "Love you. Good night." The scent lingered even after she walked away. At first, he told himself it was nothing. Maybe she tried a sample at a store, maybe a coworker hugged her too close. But the thought nestled somewhere deep, waiting for evidence to cling to. Now, 2 weeks later, those tiny details had accumulated. A shift in her laugh, lighter and strangely distant. Her new habit of checking her phone with the screen tilted away. The slight delay in answering him when he said her name. A hairline crack across glass, barely visible, but enough to warn of a shattering. Alex set the spoon down and wiped his hands on the kitchen towel. He heard the faint hum of Sarah's voice in the hallway, talking softly on her phone. When he stepped toward the doorway, her tone immediately changed, too quick, too bright, as though someone had flipped a switch inside her. "Yes, I should go," she said hastily. "I'll text you later." "Text who later?" She slipped her phone into her purse with that same quick, careful motion she'd been using all week. When she looked up at him, her smile was almost perfect. Almost. "Smells good," she said, nodding toward the stove. "Thanks," he replied gently. "You're home early." She blinked once, barely visible but not to him. "Yeah, we wrapped up the meeting sooner than expected." He nodded, offering no indication of doubt. He'd learned long ago that people spoke more freely when they believed no one questioned them. Dinner passed with the brittle politeness of strangers in an elevator. Sarah talked about work, the new marketing proposal, the exhausting but exciting project she'd been pulled into. Alex listened, giving the appropriate hums and nods, storing her every word with careful precision. Each detail was a stitch in the picture he didn't yet want to see completed. After dinner, Sarah disappeared into the bedroom to finish something for work. Alex washed the dishes, the soapy water warm around his hands. He stared at the window in front of him, watching the reflection of his own face calm, collected, expression steady. The calm felt foreign. When had it become a mask instead of a true part of him? Later that night, he awoke to the faint glow of a phone screen. Sarah was lying next to him, facing the wall, the blue light illuminating a sliver of her cheek. Her fingers danced across the screen quickly, intimately, another detail. A thread tugged loose. He pretended to shift in his sleep, rolling slightly. The screen tilted away immediately. Her body stiffened just for a second. "Everything okay?" he murmured groggily. "Yeah," she whispered, "just couldn't sleep." She turned the phone face down on the nightstand and curled away from him. The hairline crack deepened. The next morning, Alex woke before dawn. He lay there quietly, staring at the ceiling as amber light crept in. His mind replayed all the small inconsistencies not as isolated events, but as a unified melody, notes that formed a truth he wasn't ready to acknowledge. He showered, dressed, poured coffee for both of them. Sarah came down the stairs looking tired, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. Her clothes were neatly chosen, her hair styled, but there was a fragility in her posture, as though she were holding something tightly inside her ribcage. "Early start?" she asked, glancing at his briefcase. He smiled softly. Just a lot to do today. She hesitated. I might be home late again. The project is still intense. He nodded with the same gentle acceptance. I understand. Of course he did. He understood everything she wasn't saying. When she left, he watched from the window, his fingers tapping lightly against the glass. Her car pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. 10 minutes later, Alex sat at the kitchen table, opened his laptop and began searching. Not for dirt, not for betrayal. No, just for clarity. He didn't invade her privacy. He didn't crack passwords or snoop through messages. Alex was a believer in boundaries even now, but he did check one thing, the company website. Sarah's department had a late project in 3 months. The second inconsistency had arrived the day before, wrapped in the soft glow of dusk. She'd returned home smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at him in months, radiant, almost euphoric. He'd kissed her cheek. She'd flinched, not dramatically, but enough for his body to catch what her words tried to hide. He'd asked good day. She'd smiled, yeah, really good. Tonight he replayed that smile in his head as he walked through their living room. The framed photos of vacations, anniversaries, little moments they once believed unbreakable. Pain coiled inside him, sharp and sudden. But beneath it something else stirred, a strange steadiness, like the calm that settles over the ocean just before a storm. He wasn't a man prone to anger, but he was a man who saw clearly once the pieces aligned. And now, though he wished he could unknow it, the picture had formed. She was seeing someone. He exhaled slowly, sitting on the edge of the sofa. His hands folded together, fingers interlocked tightly. His heart beat heavily, not in rage, but in the thudding ache of someone who still cared, still wanted to understand. Why? Why wasn't he enough? But he wasn't a man who let emotions drag him into chaos. He believed in logic, in dignity, in facing truth without losing oneself to it. And so he planned, not revenge, not yet, but understanding. He needed the whole picture before he acted. The real confirmation came the following Friday night. Sarah had told him she was going out with coworkers to celebrate finishing the project. Alex kissed her goodbye, holding her just a second longer than usual. She stepped away quickly. He watched her drive off, then glanced at the clock, 7:15. He didn't follow her. He simply waited. At 9:30, he checked the restaurant where her coworkers usually met. No group reservation, no coworkers posting celebratory photos, nothing. At 11, she came home, smelling again of that faint floral perfume, her cheeks flushed, her hair slightly mussed. She looked alive. Did you have fun? He asked with a gentle smile. Yeah, she replied too quickly, tired though. She didn't meet his eyes. For the first time, Alex felt something inside him harden. Not bitterness, not hatred, but resolve. Whatever happened next needed to be graceful, measured, precise. He refused to become the kind of man who screamed or accused. He refused to let betrayal turn him into something he was. If his marriage was ending, it would end with dignity. If he confronted her, it would be with clarity. And if he sought retribution, it would be the kind of revenge that left no scars, only truth. Beautiful, quiet truth. 2 days later, Alex found the final proof without even looking for it. Sarah was in the shower, humming softly. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, his name on the screen flashing. Unknown caller ID. He ignored it. The second buzz came 30 seconds later. Voice message received. Then a text preview flashed briefly before disappearing. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? His heart stopped. The world stopped. But his face did not change. He simply closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and let the truth finally settle, heavy but unavoidable. This was no hairline crack. This was the shattering. When Sarah stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, she found Alex sitting calmly at the window, sunlight catching the side of his face. He turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "Big plans today?" she asked lightly, unaware that the ground beneath her life had just shifted forever. "Not really," Alex replied softly, "just thinking." And as she moved around the room, humming, dressing, unaware that her lover's message still glowed faintly on the phone beside her, Alex felt a strange and sudden calm wash over him. He knew exactly what he needed to do. And he would do it beautifully. With grace, with intelligence, with a quietness that would make the truth undeniable. This wasn't the end. Not yet. This was merely the moment before the curtain rose, before everything Sarah thought was hidden would step into the light, before the consequences she had never imagined would arrive in the most elegant form possible. Alex stood, buttoned his shirt, and smiled softly to himself. The game had begun. The week that followed unfolded with deceptive tranquility, like the surface of a lake beneath which unseen currents twist and churn. Sarah moved through the days with her usual blend of charm and hurried excuses, her phone never far from reach, her smiles increasingly disconnected from the man she once adored. And Alex, steadfast, observant Alex, watched it all with a stillness so deep it could be mistaken for blindness. But he saw everything. And now he understood everything. The truth had been confirmed not by a dramatic confrontation, not by shouting, not by some impulsive burst of anger, but by a simple text message delivered into the quiet morning like a whisper that changed the course of a life. What he did next would define everything. It began with a file, a simple document. Alex opened a blank folder on his computer and titled it only "Clarity." Inside, he began assembling pieces, not incriminating evidence, not screenshots or recordings, but details, dates, times, Sarah's own explanations. Her claimed late meetings contrasted with the company's public calendar, her coworker drinks night that never existed, apps on her phone she'd never used before, the personal shifts, her laughter, her avoidance, her brightened cheeks after nights away. All the small truths she thought were invisible. He didn't gather them as weapons. He gathered them like an architect gathers blueprints, every line designed with purpose. If Sarah wanted freedom, she would have it. If she wanted secrecy, she would lose it. If she wanted to rewrite their life, he would ensure the final chapter bore his signature, not her silence. Alex wasn't planning chaos. He was planning elegance. The second step arrived quietly, disguised as an ordinary dinner. He cooked something simple, her favorite lemon rosemary chicken, a dish he had once made to celebrate her birthday, back when love flowed easily between them. When Sarah came home, her eyes widened slightly at the smell. "You cooked?" she asked, surprised. "Thought we could eat together tonight," he replied, smiling warmly. For a second, guilt flickered behind her eyes, but only for a second. "That's nice," she murmured. They ate like two actors performing in a play neither one believed in anymore. Sarah chatted lightly about inconsequential details, her coworker's new haircut, the new espresso machine in the office lounge. Alex nodded thoughtfully, his expressions gentle and inviting. Then he asked softly, "When's your next late night at work?" Her fork froze midair. "Oh, I think Wednesday. We might have another meeting." "I see," he said calmly. "Hope it goes well." He didn't need to press further. The mechanism of guilt was subtle, give it silence, and it expanded all on its own. Sarah chewed slowly, avoiding his gaze. "You're being really sweet lately," she said after a moment. "It means a lot." "Oh," he replied, "I've always tried to be." That did something. She swallowed hard. A crack, tiny but significant, rippled across her composure. That night she stayed awake longer than usual. She lay there beside him, shifting uncomfortably, her breaths uneven. Alex kept his eyes closed, letting the tension seep into the room like fog. Eventually, she sat up quietly and tiptoed out of the bedroom. Alex waited 5 seconds, then 6, then 7. He rose silently and followed. He found her in the hallway, leaning against the wall, pressing her phone to her ear. "I can't talk long," she whispered. "He's asleep." Alex's chest tightened, but his face remained serene. She continued in low, hurried murmurs. "Yes, Wednesday, same place." A pause, a soft laugh, a sound filled with tenderness she no longer shared at home. Alex closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the truth not with rage, but with acceptance. Some endings were simply inevitable. But that didn't mean they had to be ugly. He stepped back into the bedroom before she returned, lying perfectly still. When Sarah climbed into bed beside him, her breath shaking faintly, he placed an arm around her. She tensed. Another detail. Another thread. He didn't hold her tighter. He let go gently and rolled onto his side, giving her room to breathe. But he didn't sleep. Not for hours. The following morning, Alex woke early and made coffee, 1 cup for him, 1 for Sarah. He placed hers on the counter with a small note. "Have a good day." Warmth, gentleness, these were not tactics. They were mirrors. Mirrors that reflected who he was and who she had chosen to become. When Sarah entered the kitchen, her hair slightly messy, she blinked in surprise. "You didn't have to do this," she murmured. "I wanted to," he said simply. Her eyes flickered downward, ashamed. He watched her leave for work, smiling through the window as her car disappeared. Then he sat at the table, exhaled deeply, and began the next phase of his plan. Quiet, elegant, undeniable. He began with the binder. A physical one. Black leather smooth to the touch. Understated, professional, almost luxurious. Alex slipped the growing contents of the Clarity folder inside, each page meticulously arranged. Again, not incriminating photographs, not accusations, just facts, timelines. Sarah's own explanations placed beside objective truths. A story told gently, but unmistakably. Not to ruin her, but to show her. To hold up that mirror she kept avoiding. Then came the second part, preparing his exit. Not dramatic, not rushed, not cruel. Just intentional. He contacted a realtor, quietly packed away a few personal belongings, books, old journals, his grandfather's watch, the leather-bound notebook Sarah gave him in their first year of marriage. Not enough to alarm her, but enough to give himself space when the moment came. He transferred half their savings into a separate account, his own, one they'd agreed years ago he could use for personal pursuits. He checked the laws, the regulations, ensuring every step was ethical and fair. Everything Alex did was clean, transparent, dignified. He wasn't running. He was positioning. On Wednesday, Sarah left the house wearing a dress Alex had always loved, a deep navy blue that made her eyes look like dusk. She seemed nervous, her movements hurried, her words clipped. "Don't wait up," she said, grabbing her purse. "The meeting will be late." "No problem," Alex replied with a warm smile. "I trust you." Her breath caught. The words landed like stones, dropped into still water. And he meant them, not as sarcasm, not as accusation, but as a final test of her conscience. She nodded, swallowed hard, and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. Alex stood in the quiet hallway for a long moment, letting his resolve settle into place. Tonight was not the confrontation. Tonight was the observation. He didn't need to follow her to hurt her. He wasn't interested in catching her in the act. He wanted something else. He wanted understanding. He wanted closure. He wanted the truth to arrive in her mind, not because he shouted it, but because she saw how contradictory her world had become. He grabbed his coat, stepped out into the cool night air and walked. Not to the restaurant where she'd be. Not to the parking lot where the other man would arrive. But to a quiet cafe nearby. A place with warm lights and calm music. A place where he could observe without invading, where he could feel the weight of his decisions without collapsing under them. He ordered tea, sat by the window and waited. At 7:42 p.m. he saw her. She wasn't alone. A man, tall, impeccably dressed, met her with a smile so familiar, so intimate that Alex felt something sharp twist in his chest. They walked together, unaware of the figure in the cafe. They didn't touch obscenely. They didn't kiss in the street. But the way Sarah looked at him. It was enough. More than enough. And yet Alex did not break. He watched not as a betrayed husband, but as a man witnessing the final confirmation of something he had already accepted. They disappeared into the restaurant together. Alex stared down at his tea. He let his breath steady. He let his heart settle. Then he quietly whispered, "All right." In that moment, the last thread tying him to the illusion of their marriage snapped, not violently, but with the soft clarity of something being gently released. What came next would be deliberate. It would be quiet. It would be beautiful in its finality. He returned home before Sarah. He placed the black leather binder in the center of the dining table along with a handwritten letter. The letter wasn't angry. It wasn't accusatory. It was honest. It spoke of love, of loss, of her gentleness and her brilliance, of his pain delivered softly, of the truth he now understood, of the dignity he chose. It ended with a simple line. Tomorrow we talk, not to fight, but to close this chapter properly. Then he went upstairs, packed the last of his belongings, and placed a spare key on his nightstand. He slept not in their bed, but on the guest room couch. It was the first night in months he slept deeply. Sarah returned home past midnight. Alex heard the quiet click of the door, the soft shuffle of her shoes being kicked off, the faint clink of her keys on the table. He didn't rise. He didn't speak. But he heard everything. The silence when she saw the binder. The rustling as she opened it. The sharp intake of breath as she turned the first page. The trembling. The whisper of her knees hitting the chair. The quiet, broken sound she made when she read the letter. Alex closed his eyes. He didn't need to witness her unraveling. He didn't want vengeance. He wanted truth. And tonight she had found it. Not through confrontation, but through reflection. Through the realization that he had known all along and had chosen grace instead of wrath. It was the most powerful blow he could have delivered. Not screaming, not threats, but dignity. And dignity, when placed beside betrayal, was a mirror too bright to look into without pain. When morning came, the house felt different. He heard her moving downstairs, slowly, uncertainly. Footsteps that once carried confidence were now hesitant, almost childlike. When he descended the stairs, she was sitting at the dining table, the binder open, her eyes red and swollen. "Alex," she whispered. He held up a hand gently. "Sit, we'll talk, but not to hurt each other." She bowed her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. I didn't think you knew." "I know," he said quietly, "for a while now. And you just let me." "Let you?" He shook his head. "No, I didn't let you do anything. I simply watched. I waited for the right moment to respond. I wanted to understand first." She covered her face with shaking hands. "I'm so sorry." "I believe you," he said softly, "but that doesn't change what happened." Her shoulders shook. He sat down, not across from her but beside her, a choice that stunned her into silence. "I didn't make that binder to punish you," he said. "I made it to show you the truth, because you stopped seeing it." She looked at him with hollow eyes. "What happens now?" Alex exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of every moment leading to this one. Now, he said gently, we end this the right way, with honesty, with respect, with clarity. She began to cry, quiet, broken sobs that cracked open the polished shell she'd built around her secret life. Alex didn't comfort her. Not out of cruelty. Out of closure. The chapter was ending, and he would make sure it ended beautifully. Morning light stretched across the dining room like a hesitant hand reaching for something fragile. Sarah sat in her chair, shoulders trembling, fingers curled around the edge of the binder as if holding on to it could somehow keep everything from collapsing. Alex stood quietly nearby, not packing, not fidgeting, simply present. Unshaken. A pillar in the middle of a storm she had created. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Sarah swallowed hard and whispered, I didn't think it would go this far. Alex tilted his head. What did you think would happen? She flinched. He didn't raise his voice, didn't lean forward in accusation, didn't imbue the question with anger. But the simplicity of it, so calm, so direct, cut deeper than any shouting ever could. I don't know, she murmured. I think I thought I could keep both worlds separate. Two lives, Alex said softly, one built on truth and one built on excuses. She nodded shakily, tears sliding down her cheeks. He took a slow breath. Sarah, I'm not here to shame you, I'm not here to punish you. I'm here because I deserve answers, and so do you. Her lips trembled, I know. Good. He pulled out a chair and sat across from her. Then let's try to be honest with each other, truly honest for the first time in months. Sarah wiped her face with the back of her hand, steeling herself. Okay. Alex folded his hands on the table. When did it start? She winced. About 6 months ago. His jaw tightened, but his eyes remained steady. Why? The question seemed to hit her harder than anything in the binder. She stared down at her hands as if answers might be etched on her palms. I felt lonely, she whispered. You were working so much. You were always tired, and I got caught up in feeling wanted again. Alex didn't interrupt. I know that sounds selfish, she continued, voice cracking. I know it doesn't excuse anything. It just happened. Nothing just happens, he said quietly. There are choices. Each one leads to the next. She nodded miserably. I know. He tapped a finger lightly against the binder. And the nights you said you were working late, the non-existent meetings. Her face flushed with shame. I'm so sorry. Alex let the apology hover in the air, unsatisfied but acknowledged. And him, he asked. She hesitated. His name is Marcus. Yes, Alex said softly. I assumed you knew him well enough to trust him with parts of your life you no longer trusted me with. Her tears came harder now. I didn't mean to stop trusting you. But you did, he replied gently. And you didn't tell me. You pulled away. You turned to someone else. That's the part that hurts more than anything. Sarah covered her face with her hands. I ruined everything. No, Alex said. You ended something that was already breaking, but you didn't ruin me. That last line landed like a feather coated in steel, soft but unbreakable. Sarah lifted her gaze, eyes shimmering. Do you hate me? He shook his head slowly. Hate takes energy, and I won't invest anything more into something you chose to abandon. She sobbed quietly. Alex rose from his chair and walked to the window. He looked out into the yard where early morning dew clung to the grass like tiny diamonds. A world still beautiful, still intact, indifferent to the collapse of a marriage. We're ending this, he said gently, but we will end it with dignity. Sarah looked up. Do you mean divorce? He nodded once. Yes. She broke again, tears spilling fast. I thought maybe we could try to fix it. Alex turned to her, his expression soft but resolute. If you had come to me before the lies, before the secrecy, maybe. But you chose someone else, and then you chose to hide it. Those choices don't disappear because you regret them now. Sarah buried her face in her hands again, but he didn't flinch this time. For the first time in months, he felt clarity, clean and sharp, like the first cold breath of winter. You deserve honesty, he continued quietly, and so do I. Will separate everything fairly. No fighting, no lawyers tearing our lives apart. We'll do this like two adults who once loved each other. She nodded weakly. I don't deserve that. Maybe not, he said gently, but I'm giving it anyway. Her breath hitched. Why? Alex leaned against the wall, arms crossed loosely. Because what you did says everything about you. How I respond says everything about me. After their conversation, Sarah retreated upstairs, emotionally drained. Alex stayed in the dining room, letting the silence settle back into the house. It felt heavier now, but cleaner, like a room that had been cleared of smoke, even if the memory of the fire lingered. He collected the binder and placed it back in his briefcase. Not as evidence now, but as a reminder of who he became in the face of betrayal, a man who refused to be reduced by someone else's choices. Then he brewed tea, Earl Grey, his favorite, and sat at the table, staring at the steam rising from the cup. He felt an ache, yes, but he also felt something unexpected. Relief. For months he had sensed the truth in the shadows. Now the shadows were gone. Painful clarity was still clarity. The next few days passed in a strange, suspended quiet. Sarah tried to stay out of his way. She cried more often than she spoke. She apologized with her eyes even when her mouth didn't form the words. She cooked dinner once, burned it, then cried while throwing it out. Alex helped her without comment. Not with affection. With grace. She seemed startled every time he didn't raise his voice, didn't lash out, didn't punish her. But that was the point. His resolve, his composure, his patience. It was the most elegant revenge of all. Not cruelty, not retaliation. Elegance. Dignity. The overwhelming contrast between his loyalty and her betrayal. It broke her more than any anger could have. One night she approached him as he was folding laundry. Alex, I want you to know this. I never stopped caring about you, even when I was doing what I was doing. He folded a shirt smoothly, placed it on the pile and met her gaze. I believe you cared, he said gently, just not enough. She flinched. He didn't keep pushing. He simply turned back to the clothes, letting the silence say everything. 2 days later, Alex scheduled a meeting with a mediator, someone neutral, someone professional. When he told Sarah, she nodded with tearful gratitude. Thank you for not making this ugly, she whispered. I don't need to hurt you, he said softly. Life will handle that on its own. She stared at him. Breath caught in her throat because she understood, she truly did. He wasn't talking about karma. He was talking about the moment Marcus would eventually leave her, or disappoint her, or reveal a different side of himself. The moment she would look back and realize the depth of what she lost. Not the marriage, but the man who stood before her now, strong, calm, self-respecting, whole. His revenge was not humiliation. It was transformation. Alex moved out 2 weeks after the mediator meeting. He found a small apartment overlooking the river, a peaceful, light-filled place perfect for rebuilding a life. When he packed the last of his things, Sarah helped quietly, her movements slow, as though each item he took was a thread being pulled from the fabric of her world. When he closed his suitcase, she finally whispered, "Can I ask you something?" He looked up, "Of course." "When did you stop loving me?" The question hung in the air like frost. He considered it carefully. "I didn't stop," he said softly. "I just stopped believing the love meant anything to you." She broke again, covering her mouth as sobs shook her. He walked past her, not coldly, not dismissively, but with the finality of someone stepping out of a story that no longer needed him. At the doorway, he paused. She looked up, eyes swollen, desperate. "Goodbye, Sarah," he said gently. Not angry, not bitter, just done. She reached out a hand as if to grab him but stopped halfway. Her arm dropped. He stepped out into the cool air and closed the door behind him. The moment the latch clicked, he felt something in his chest loosen, then release completely. Freedom. That night, alone in his new apartment, Alex sat by the window, the city lights reflecting in the river below. He breathed in deeply, letting the quiet wash over him. For the first time in months, his heart felt steady. Whole. He had lost a marriage, but he had kept himself. And that, he realized, was the most beautiful victory he could have asked for. The first month after the separation passed like the slow settling of dust after a building quietly collapses. Not with an explosion, not with screaming chaos, just with a heavy, inevitable descent into a new shape of life. For Alex, the new shape felt unexpectedly natural. He arranged his apartment with the kind of precision and intention he had once brought to every project at work. The books on the shelves, the plants near the window, the minimalist desk facing the river, a coffee table with clean lines, warm tones, and nothing unnecessary. His new space felt like breathing fresh air after years spent in a room, slowly losing oxygen. He woke early, made breakfast for one, walked along the river before work. He reconnected with old friends. He started attending a weekly philosophy group he'd always wanted to try but never found time for. The stillness in his apartment wasn't loneliness, it was clarity. Every day, he felt a little stronger. Every day, he regained a little more of himself. But for Sarah, life unfolded differently. It began with small echoes, ripples she didn't expect. First came the awkwardness at work. People knew, not from Alex. He had told no one, but truth has its own currents, and Sarah's emotional unraveling had been visible to more colleagues than she realized. Whispers formed, pitying looks, a distance she couldn't explain away. Her performance slipped. She started arriving late, leaving early, forgetting deadlines. The confidence that once carried her through rooms faded into nervous glances and distracted sighs. Marcus at first was comforting, attentive, warm. He made her feel wanted just as he had when the affair began. But now that the secrecy, the stolen sweetness, was gone, something else settled between them. Reality. And reality was heavier than desire. He began canceling plans. Small excuses at first: work, errands, fatigue. Then came bigger ones. Then came the withdrawal. One night over coffee in his apartment, he sighed and said, "Sarah, things are complicated. I didn't expect you to actually leave your marriage." Her heart cracked. "I thought you cared," she whispered. "I do," he said weakly, "but I don't think we work outside of what we had." What we had. Not what we could build. Not what we were. Just what they destroyed. The words lodged in her chest like splinters. Later that night, he ended it gently. So gently it almost felt crueler. Sarah cried the entire drive home. She cried even harder when she realized she didn't know who to call anymore. Alex had always been the person she confided in when life hurt. And she had destroyed that bridge with her own hands. A few weeks later, she reached out. The message was simple. "Could we meet? I want to talk if you're willing." Alex stared at the screen for a long moment, not because the message confused him, but because of what it didn't make him feel. No rush of old affection, no stab of longing, no bitterness. Just calm. After a moment, he replied, "Yes, coffee shop near the river, Saturday, 10 a.m. Saturday arrived cool and bright, a thin breeze carrying the scent of water. Alex took a seat at an outdoor table, sipping tea as he waited. He looked peaceful, clean-shaven, neatly dressed, posture relaxed. When Sarah approached, she hesitated several feet away before finding the courage to step forward. She looked like a painting touched by rain, still recognizable, still beautiful, but with softened edges and faded colors. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hello," Alex replied, warm but reserved. "Have a seat." She sat, folding her hands together tightly on her lap. "You look good." "Thank you." "I mean it," she added, her voice breaking slightly. "You look happy." He nodded slowly. "I am." The admission struck her visibly. She inhaled sharply through her nose, eyes glistening. "I'm glad," she whispered, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her pain. Alex waited. He wasn't cruel enough to fill the silence for her. Sarah swallowed hard. "I owe you so much more than an apology, but I want to say it anyway. I'm sorry, Alex, for everything, for lying, for hurting you, for not valuing you the way you deserved. You were a good husband, better than I ever understood." Alex listened, steady as ever. "I ruined something beautiful," she continued, "and I didn't even realize what I was losing until it was gone." He nodded once, not dismissing her words, not embracing them either, simply acknowledging the truth she had finally allowed herself to face. After a moment he spoke, "Thank you for saying that." Her eyes widened slightly, as if she had expected anger instead of acceptance. He continued, "But you need to understand, your apology doesn't change the past, and it doesn't obligate me to reopen a door that's already closed." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them. "I know," she whispered. "I didn't come here hoping you'd take me back. I just needed to tell you how deeply I regret everything." Alex leaned back in his chair, watching her with a gaze full of compassion but free of attachment. "Sarah," he said gently, "what happened between us, it hurt, deeply. But it also clarified something important. I rediscovered who I am when I'm not bending myself to hold a relationship upright alone." She nodded, crying silently. "You didn't destroy me," he said. "You freed me to become someone stronger." Her breath hitched. "I see that now." He smiled softly. "Good." They sat for a moment in the quiet morning sunlight, letting the weight of the past settle like dust that no longer needed to be swept. Finally, Sarah asked, "Can I ask you one more thing?" "Of course." "Do you think there's forgiveness between us? Not reconciliation, just forgiveness." Alex looked at her, really looked, and felt no anger, no longing, no bitterness, just acceptance. "Yes," he said, "there is." Her face crumpled with relief and heartbreak all at once. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded. "We'll both move forward separately and better than before." She exhaled shakily. "I hope you find someone who appreciates you the way I should have." "I will," he said quietly, "when the time is right." She hesitated. "And me?" Alex gave her a gentle, almost sad smile. "I hope you learn to appreciate yourself first." Her tears fell freely now. "Goodbye, Sarah," he said softly. She closed her eyes. "Goodbye, Alex." She walked away slowly, each step deliberate, as though leaving not just him, but the version of herself that made all the wrong choices. Alex watched her go, not with triumph, not with regret, but with peace. Elegant, quiet, complete. That afternoon, Alex returned to his apartment. He brewed tea, opened the window, and let the river breeze drift in. The sunlight rested on his skin with a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. He wasn't a victim. He wasn't broken. He wasn't bitter. He was free. And the most beautiful revenge had already taken place, not through cruelty or humiliation, but through growth, through grace, through becoming a man whose strength outshone the shadows cast by betrayal. The future stretched out before him, vast and bright. He wasn't afraid of it. He welcomed it. After a long sip of tea, Alex closed his eyes and smiled. The chapter was over, and the next one was his alone to write.